All right, we're back at it again. All right, saying the place to be. Ric Serritella alongside me, Russell Lande. This is the NFL Draft Watch Show. It is Saturday, November 8th, 2025. We got the NCAA Week 11 docket fired up. Russ, are you ready to rock and roll today?
I am really excited to rock and roll today. I mean, these are big games, and I'm truthfully excited. Oregon, Iowa, such a contrast in styles of both teams and programs. That one to me is going to be one of the more interesting games in the last month, really. So I'm very excited to watch that one. Anytime I get to see a big time opponent come into Kinnick Stadium, I know it's going to be a challenge, so it's going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, they're a gritty, tough. Iowa's defense is always going to be on point. Oregon with one of the best offenses, and we'll get into that Big Ten affair. In fact, we've got big time marquee matchups in almost every major conference. We got the Big Ten we just mentioned about. We'll also dive into BYU and Texas Tech. Little Big 12 action kicking off at noon Eastern time, and then the LSU Alabama SEC showdown. We're going to get it all in here over the next hour of power or so. Just a quick reminder, allaccessfootball.com is your home for year-round draft coverage. We've got the Hot 100 prospect list that came out on Thursday. I know, Russ, you were all over that one. You can also follow along at home with the Draft Insider that was posted yesterday. We've actually got over 100 prospects listed for these three matchups over on the website. Verified measurements, projections, not meaning all of them are going to come out this year. Draft eligible, so that includes redshirt sophomores and underclassmen as well that are draft eligible. And of course, we had the world famous All Access Football Report on Wednesday. We had the Scout Notebook on Monday, and keep a lookout for the Scout Notebook this Monday because we're going to highlight a lot of the East-West Shrine Bowl invites. And Russ, we haven't had a chance to talk about that. Last week, the East-West Shrine Bowl started rolling out invitations, and that's always an exciting time of year to know who exactly just might be in this year's NFL draft. Speaking of which, I saw yesterday or 2 days ago, the Boston College offensive linemen, including Logan Taylor and Jude Bowery. Bowery, a redshirt junior, so a little bit different wrinkle over the last couple years with these underclassmen invites, something we haven't seen in the past.
Yeah, no doubt. And give Jim Nagy some credit for that. I mean, he was the one that first really pushed
Yeah.
that, getting guys into Senior Bowl as long as they graduated. Now it's sort of expanding. And I love Logan Taylor getting down there from BC because this kid is Canadian. So give him a chance to shine in front of everything. I think it's still so interesting that the East-West Shrine game pushing from where they always had been, sort of that number 2 game behind the Senior Bowl. They've really pushed now to, I think the Senior Bowl is still the preeminent game, but I think the East-West is right there with it now. It's no longer a huge separation.
Yeah.
So I think, and I love what they're doing. They're sort of following the Senior Bowl's role of saying, hey, we're not just going to email announce the invitations to you and hope you accept, and we'll notify NFL teams the week before the game. We're going to put it out there on social media. And I think it's important. I think it helps the game get some publicity as opposed to it just being something that teams find out about a week or two before the game.
Yeah, I think the social media element is something that really, over the last several years, that have played a huge role in these invitations. And it's been exciting to see. Anyway, we got the East-West Shrine Bowl tracker continuously updated. And tomorrow, the Oklahoma State NFL Draft Watch will be posted, which means what, Russ? We've now posted every Power 4 program with all of their draft eligible prospects, measurements.
Means Rick's been watching film.
Yeah, been locked in the cave over here. So, all right, he's Russ Lande. I'm Ric Serritella, of course, former NFL, CFL, XFL scout. Not too many people you're going to find with the experience and knowledge of Russell Lande. Of course, I am Ric Serritella over at allaccessfootball.com, and we're going to get into these marquee matchups, Russell. Let's start off with the SEC because this one's fascinating to me, especially with all the quarterback talk that's been rumbling this week. And Ty Simpson from Alabama, one of these one-year starters that we've talked about at length, reports indicate this week there's a strong chance that he could return back to Alabama. Now, Garrett Nussmeier, we know, has exhausted his eligibility and will be in this year's class. And somebody we actually had, I thought coming into the year, was considered to be the consensus top quarterback, has dropped off. We know injuries have played a role there, but I still view Nussmeier in that first round equation. Just some thoughts on the LSU-Alabama game before we dive into the prospects, Russ.
Well, first off, I think it's interesting. If you would ask people week 2 where this matchup would be, I think everybody would have thought LSU was going to steamroll Alabama. I mean, LSU had the big win the first night, and it looked like things were going the right way. You had Nussmeier, you had the Mansour Delane corner who would come in, Hal Perkins, all these guys. They played a great first game or two, and then the wheels came off. And now it's sort of they're sliding. Alabama's coming up, and I think that first week or two of Alabama, you said, who's going to be the quarterback? Is Simpson good enough? There was some inconsistency that first week or two. So it's interesting to see both programs going a little bit different direction, but both teams are still loaded with talent. It's going to be interesting to see if Simpson decides to stay another year. I think it's going to be very hard if he legitimately gets feedback that he is a first-round pick. I think it's going to be hard for him to say no. Play history, we've both talked about it. Quarterbacks with 1 year starting experience in college, the failure rate is extraordinarily high. To me, if unless there is a dire financial reason, and with NIL today, it's really hard to have a dire financial reason. I think he might be better off getting that second year in, even if teams are saying he's going to be a first rounder, because just that failure rate, there are a lot of really good quarterbacks who have come in, haven't had that second year as a starter in college, and it's never really worked out for them at the NFL.
Yeah, and there's a long list, right? Like Mitchell Trubisky, Dwayne Haskins. You can go back to Akili Smith, Mark Sanchez. You will not find a first-round signal. I think Kyler Murray might be the exception to the case, and his NFL career, as I think, kind of to be determined. That the Arizona Cardinals don't really want to seem to want him. But it's going to be an interesting, because like from a football development standpoint, I would say absolutely Ty Simpson, go back to college. You'll be better prepared for the pros. You'll solidify your draft stock. And then there's the business element side of things where, hey, weak quarterback class, your stock's at an all-time high. From a financial point of view, you might want to strike while the iron's hot. And I think that's going to be the confliction of the decision that he has to make here in the next couple of months. But let's get into it. LSU at Alabama. LSU 5-3. The Alabama Crimson Tide now ranked number 4, once again rising up the rank 7-1. This is a primetime affair, Russ. 7:30 p.m. kickoff over on ABC. Let's begin with the LSU Tigers, who, by the way, these two blue blood programs, LSU has 56 players currently on NFL rosters or practice squads. Alabama with a whopping 73, which is the most of any college football program. We could probably thank Nick Saban for that one. Go ahead, Russ.
I mean, it's interesting because I think when the season started, we were very high on all the LSU guys. There's still a handful that I think, especially like Mansour, that you got to be excited about. He could potentially be the first corner off the board. But there's been some disappointment. And I think part of that stems from their offensive line is not a bunch of seniors. So it's a lot of guys without a lot of experience, which has made it hard for their offense to still play at the same level. I still like Nussmeier. When I watch him play, I have a hard time figuring out, is he a guy that is going to break the mold and be able to succeed as a smaller guy? Is he talented enough to be like a Baker Mayfield? Or is he more like, and the kid's name is slipping my head, the Minshew kid? Not that Minshew is tiny, but he plays a little bit like Minshew when I watch him. So figuring out where he sits between the two, I think that's going to be a lot of where he ends up getting drafted. I like Nussmeier's accurate. He's smart. He knows what he's doing with the ball. He understands from all the experience. Don't rush things. Don't put balls in bad spots. There's a lot to like there. I'm just concerned there are times you look at him and say, okay, does he have enough there physically to make all the throws at the next level with NFL DBs challenging him? That's the concern. The receivers, we've talked about him a ton. I think we both really like the Barry and Brown kid. We've talked about him since the beginning because he brings a little dynamic explosiveness, a little potential as a returner. The Xavier Thomas kid is another kid that's been there. I like Brown more. I think he's got a little bit more potential at the next level. Although I will say the weight is definitely a concern because when you watch him, I don't know what he weighs, but he looks thin. Their tight end, Sharp, a guy that we have talked about a little bit. not a guy that jumps out as a special frontline elite guy. But when you watch them play, he's a good football player. He's smooth, he's fluid. I don't think he has that top end tight end speed, but I think he's fast enough to be in the mix as a starter eventually. He's got good hands, although he will lose focus and drop an occasional ball. And I think the strength of their team prospect wise is defensively. I mean, it's pretty impressive when you look at Patrick Payton, who came over from Florida State, not a guy that's going to be a first rounder, but he's an athletic kid. You have the Jack Plyborn kid, the other defensive end, plays like his hair's on fire every single snap, just a war daddy of a competitor. I love Harold Perkins. We've talked about him a ton. I think as a college player, both you and I would agree, he's about as good as you're going to get in terms of production, competitiveness, instincts. I think the debate at the NFL level is just where does he fit? Do you keep him at linebacker, playing off the ball where he's had a lot of success? Or do you let him rush the passer where he's also had a ton of success, but he's not a big guy? I think he's going to measure in at that 6 foot, less than 6'1", about 225, 230. Where does that fit for NFL teams, especially now with analytics? They're very hesitant to put really undersized guys with a hand in the ground. And then, of course, their best prospect by far is the Mansour Delane kid. This kid, the transfer from Virginia Tech, has shown that although he's 5'11", and maybe he's 5'10" and change, we don't know exactly, but even if he doesn't have the perfect height in today's world where NFL teams are dying for 6'1", 6'2" guys, this kid's a player. He's physical, he's aggressive, he's got that that sort of, I know where the ball's going and I'm going to go get it, whether I got to go over you, around you, through you. He's got natural timing to break up passes, and he plays with that confidence that the great cornerbacks play with. So he's a kid I think is actually going to go up draft boards as we get closer to the draft, because he is really, to me, the type of corner you want lining up in tough situations on the best receiver. He's got that sort of grittiness and the athletic ability. I love this kid.
I had a first round grade on him at Virginia Tech last year. I was kind of shocked that he came back to school, but you didn't hear a lot of people talking about him. I think making the switch over to LSU, more visible, raised his draft profile. And yeah, you're right. He doesn't have many flaws. What you want to nitpick are physical limitations, the length. I mean, I can live with 5'11" and 1/8 is what I have him at.
Yep.
He is a little light, right? Some of these LSU guys are a little light. And, you know, if I had to nitpick or criticize one thing in Mansour Delane, he can get a little bit grabby at times. But otherwise, he's a lockdown, plug and play. He's my number one rated cornerback, and I think it'll stay that way. You mentioned Harold Perkins. I had him at 6 foot and 5/8 inches in the spring, 224 pounds. He's just a pint-sized playmaker that you do really have to figure out what you're going to do with him, because I do think he's going to lack the necessary height and length to be an effective edge rusher. I know he's done that a little bit, and you've got to really go back, watch the film, and figure out how you want to use him. I might just stick him in as a Mike linebacker and let him roam let him go nuts, sideline to sideline. Whit Weeks, we didn't mention, a big playmaking linebacker. He's been very steady, very consistent. I definitely see him in the day 2 range. And then Barian Brown, I'm with you. I think this is a guy, maybe people don't see it. I wouldn't be shocked if he goes in the first round, especially if he runs as fast as what I'm hearing, because he could test the combine record time, right, for the fastest 40. That's how fast Barian Brown is. And, you know, look for him on gadget plays. Look on dinks and dunks. I mean, the blink of an eye, he can take a bubble screen pass and turn it into a first down or more. And that's what he does. After the catch, he can gain yards with that speed. And, you know, I'll bring it back over to Garrett Nussmeier, because I think, too, especially with Harold Perkins, you got to go back and look at old tape. I think you got to go back and look at last year with Nussmeier and all the things that he did well when he wasn't playing with the strained torso and the patellar knee injury that's kind of bothered him, and especially with the downfield throws. And you got to say, well, hold up, what is this, something that's he being hindered by injury? Because we've seen him do it in the past. Also, you talk about multiple years of starting experience at the SEC level, son of a coach, obviously the son of an offensive coordinator, NFL coach. So, you know, he was in the cradle breaking down the playbook. He's going to be a smart decision maker. And he might just be a game manager that's effective and can dink and dunk down the field and steer your offense. And that's not necessarily the worst thing. I don't think it's top 10 territory, but I think, a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers in the back end of the draft, well, Aaron Rodgers, you'll be lucky if you get another year out of him. Maybe they're a team that thinks about drafting a Garrett Nussmeier, but I think it's a supply and demand league.
Yep.
It's a weak quarterback class. So while I don't have Nussmeier as the top rated signal caller, I still do think he can find a landing there in the back end of the first round.
Well, no doubt. And think about it. If you're a team with an older quarterback and you're winning, right? So you're picking in the bottom 10 of the first round. Do you look at him and say, hey, we can get this guy that we think can be a starter. We get a value for him, and he can sit for 2 years. We don't have to feel rushed to get him in here. We can let him get healthy. We can build him up, maybe add 10, 15 pounds so he's a little bit more able to withstand the pounding of the league, and then let him take over. So there's some real value for a guy like him to a team that has an older guy who's starting at quarterback that they want to find that quote-unquote replacement, sort of what Green Bay's done the last 2 times, is use a pick in the 20s, find a quarterback that maybe not everybody is sold on, but that you as an organization think could develop, and let him be the guy to sit for a year or two. So it makes sense, and I agree with you. I mean, it's hard when your core is hurting to be able to throw consistently with power. I think the concern that raises is, and this is always what it is, it's unfair, but it is, smaller guys that are injured, teams in their mind, they say, well, they're small, that's why they're injured. Is that going to be an ongoing concern at the next level? Whereas bigger guys get injured, sometimes it's looked at as more of a fluke thing because they're bigger, so it's uncommon. So things like that can hurt guys, even though there's nothing Garrett could have done to prevent it.
Valid points. He's Russ Lande. I'm Ric Serritella. We're breaking it down, chopping it up like we do each and every Saturday. We're live, 10 a.m. Eastern here on the NFL Draft Watch Show. We just broke down the LSU Tigers. All right, Russ, let's take a look at these Alabama Crimson Tide. As I mentioned, 73 players currently in the NFL, and they are going to have another big draft crop, it looks like. What do you got here for the Crimson Tide?
Well, firstly, we got to start. We just finished with Nussmeier. We've got to talk about Ty Simpson. He's very interesting because I think when the season started, I think a lot of people, you just talked about sort of a game manager. I think a lot of people figured Alabama chose Simpson. This is his 4th year in the program. He's never been a starter before. So a lot of people thought, well, they're handing it to him sort of to manage it. Like, don't screw it up. We've got a lot of talent with a running back, Jam Miller, who's thickly built, 5'9" and change, powerful kid, got a little bit of twitch. We got Jeremy Bernard, the receiver. We got the tight end, Cuevas. We got a good offensive line. All you got to do is manage it. But I think Simpson has surprised a lot of people. Even though he looks thin, he's not tiny. He's really athletic. I think that's one of the things that people didn't anticipate when the season began is he can actually get out of the pocket, make plays on the run. He can get out of the pocket and run with the ball. He has shown a good ability to find receivers when he's sort of pushed past his initial read. He can go find alternate receivers without forcing the ball. And I know people they sort of want to say, oh, why does it matter if he hasn't played for 2 years in college? If he's good enough and the NFL team coaches him well enough. Part of what helps a guy, and the reason that 1 year thing is such a big deal, is when you've played 1 year in college, between that first year and the second year, what every team in college does that you're going to play is they pull all the film, they pull all the data, and they can look and say, look, here's the things he does, here's the things he doesn't do well. And every team that plays him that second year is going to build their coverage and their defense to force him to do things he's not good at. And if he can't make that adjustment, it's a huge indicator that when he gets to the NFL and runs into the same thing, when teams take away what he's good at, he's going to fail. So if you can't overcome that in college, it's a good indicator you're not going to do it in the pros. That's why teams want to see that second year. The more experience you get, the more you are better suited to do things you're not a stud at already. So I like Simpson. I really hope he comes back for another year, but I understand the financial side of it. Their offensive line, we've talked about them before. Dewberry, Roberts, Vandermark, 3 interior guys, very good. Roberts has sort of been up and down this year. He's not been the dominant guy, and that's part of why he's been rotating. The Caden Proctor kid, the underclassman, at tackle, is a big, strong kid. You talk about giant, 6'6 plus, 360. He looks the part, moves better than you anticipate. They've got a really talented offense in terms of skill players. Defensively, loaded too. You look at that offensive line or defense line. We've talked about Overton. The
Yeah.
Keenan kid is a kid we have not talked about as much, but this kid's a playmaker. He's sort of the to me, he's the unheralded guy on their defense because you have Overton. Then you have the Deontay Lawson. You have Damani Jackson, who's another corner that I think is going to be in that discussion with Mansour to be the first guy because Damani's a long, linear kid, over 6 feet, 190 pounds. Kid can run. Deshaun Jones, their other corner, not the elite prospect, a little bit shorter, just under 5'11", but they have two good corners. They have Overton who can get to the quarterback. I really like Keenan. And then I know you've mentioned him before. It's someone I didn't know a lot about, but the Justin Jefferson kid and the Deontay Lawson, they're two linebackers. These are really good football players that I think have grown on both me and the NFL scouts that enter in the season. I think they were both viewed as guys that were potential late rounders. I think they've moved into that fourth, fifth round consideration, possibly squeezing in to the third round, but I think it's more the top of day 3. But their team overall, the number of prospects that are legitimate guys, it is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I like Deontay Lawson. I don't think he has the upside as some of the other top caliber prospects in this year's draft class. So I don't know if he goes in round 1. I think Deontay Lawson though is a day 2 player. Jefferson has come on strong though. I mean, there could be a lot of love for him. He's been flying around the field, making tackles in the bunches. I know Jefferson's a little bit lighter, a little bit shorter, I think, but Lawson, he's been on the radar now, it seems, forever. And then the safety, Keon Sabb, we also have to mention on the back end there, redshirt junior, 6'1", 206, very good athlete out of New Jersey, I should mention. And you mentioned
that's why you mentioned him.
you mentioned Tim Keenan the third, the defensive tackle. He's like the heart and soul of this defense. You watch him; he's a fiery guy. I've even seen him put Kalen DeBoer in check. So he's got no qualms like holding teammates and coaches accountable. And we didn't mention Jam Miller because last time we talked about Alabama, he was hurt. He's now back. He's been a little bit banged up, but he's a very compact back with good vision between the tackles at 5'9" and 5/8 inches, 214 pounds, should test very well. And I know I'm going to talk about Jeremy Bernard, but Isaiah Horton has come on and been a tall, big, lengthy target for Ty Simpson. He's been one of his go-to guys, 6'4" wideout, 209 pounds. He's definitely going to get some looks there, late day 3, maybe a priority free agent. Now, LT Overton, 6'2" and 3/8, 274, gangly long arms, 82-inch wingspan, can play inside, outside versatility, can get after the quarterback, really plays with good pad level, and he shows a pass rush repertoire, right? So, like, he can be an edge rusher at the next level because he's got a whole arsenal of pass rush moves. And I do want to mention Jeremy Bernard because he is my favorite wide receivers, and I think this is shaping up to be a relatively strong wide receiver class. And I think Jeremy Bernard is amongst the best of them. And he's not my number 1 guy, but I do have a first round grade on him. I think he can do a lot. He can run the short to intermediate routes. He can beat you deep downfield. He can beat you on a short pass and gadget plays, and he's just a weapon. I mean, you get the ball in his hands, you watch him go to work. That's Jeremy Bernard, and I do believe he will land in round 1. Damani Jackson, we mentioned Mansour Delani. I have Damani Jackson as my number 2 cornerback. He's long, he's lengthy, he's physical. He comes in at 6 foot and 3/8 inches, so a little bit longer, 191 pounds, very adequate speed, fluid hips, can track the ball very well, and he's a sound tackler. Like, he's going to stick his nose in the dirt and help out in the run game, and I like that out of my cornerback. Caden Proctor, I can't talk enough about him. Listen, this guy, the athleticism and agility speaks for himself when never mind
for a huge guy like him.
Never mind Bernard taking the bubble pass for a first down. Proctor will take the screen pass and rumble, bumble, stumble for a touchdown. We've seen him do that. We've seen him line up at fullback. We've seen him take handoffs, and that speaks to his athleticism. And I think that should kind of hush some of the weight concerns that coming into the season, you heard his weight would tend to balloon. He weighed in at 359 pounds in the spring at 6'7", so he's a gargantuan mammoth galooth. And, I think he just needs to iron out some of his pass protection technique and work out some of the wrinkles there. But I do believe Caden Proctor is going to be a starter for a very long time in the National Football League. And let me just add Ty Simpson, my 2 cents, because I like the intangibles. I like his decision maker, but I like the kid. I like the personality. If you listen to him talking, he's got that Tennessee drawl or whatever it is. But I just like where this kid's head is at. He just seems very mature, very grounded. We talked about he didn't take the temptation or the urge to go and dip his toes in the transfer portal. He could have went and collected a big time payday somewhere else. He waited patiently. And, I was wrong about Dwayne Haskins. I actually like Dwayne Haskins coming out. He was the last 1-year starter that I stamped my name on. I'm going to be very hesitant to do that now because I was scarred, and every quarterback's a case-by-case basis. But as you know, Russ, when history and trends teach you something, you've got to pay attention. And the track record is long. It's proven. And until a quarterback can actually show, other than Kyler Murray, can show that being a 1-year starter translates or works at the NFL, I'm going to have my reservations.
Yeah, it's a very. I mean, I can tell you, we've both been around this game forever. I've been in draft rooms where it's talked about. The people like to say it's the 10 or 13 rule. A lot of NFL teams look at it as they want 2 seasons. They want to see 18 to 20 starts because it really gives you a chance to see their mental handling of ups and downs. How does that second year go? It's not going to go as easy because teams will know more about how good you are. They're going to be able to figure it out and take away things. So, yeah, it really does hold true. And I will say both Kyler Murray, he did have that earlier year where he started 6 games and then transfer, and ends up as a full-time starter. And Cam Newton, a lot of people like say, oh, well, Cam did well. But a lot of NFL people don't view it as a 1-year guy because the year before his year at Auburn, he led the JC National Championship at JUCO. So it wasn't like he was a 1-year starter in college. It just happened to be a 1 year at Auburn.
Right.
So it's a really small number of guys that have really gone on to even have careers in the NFL, whether like Trubisky has survived. He's been in the league 10 years now, but he was not a good enough player to be a starter. And it's just one of those things you hate to point to history and say, well, this kid's film is really good, but I'm nervous because of what I've seen in the past. You have to be. The data points are ridiculous for guys with under 13 starts in college.
You have to be conscious of it. And I'll tell you, I mean, he can make all the throws at 6'2", 208 pounds. I love the way he layers. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but he can make all the throws. He has excellent touch, anticipatory skills. I really like Ty Simpson, and we'll see what his decision holds. All right. You're watching the NFL Draft Watch Show. We're here live each and every Saturday. Today is November 8th, 2025. We're previewing the Week 11 docket, and let's go over to the Big Ten affair between number 6 Oregon, 7-1, at Iowa, 6-2, B1G, 3:30 kickoff, and we just talked about 1-year starters, and the talk now sounds like Dante Moore has a great relationship with Dan Lanning. Phil Knight already has the paycheck out, ready to write for next season's NIL buyout. So I do think Dante Moore now sounds like he's going to return to Oregon, but we can talk about it. We can be about it. Little overview on Oregon, Iowa before we get into the prospects, Russ.
I mean, I think it's going to be a challenging game for Oregon. I know how talented they are, but it's never easy going east, and they're going to a hard place to play. People don't realize going to Kinnick Stadium, Coach Ferentz there, he puts out a team. They rarely have a ton of superstars, but they are a fundamentally sound team. They rarely hurt themselves and make mistakes. They have a tendency to slow down high-powered offenses on that grass field there at Kinnick. I think this is going to be a closer game than we anticipate. Mind you, I thought UCLA was going to keep it close against Indiana, so clearly I'm not always going to be correct on my predictions, but I do think this is going to be a close game that comes down to the final 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. 2 vastly different styles, vastly different coaches, a little bit of old school versus new school in this one. Let's start off with the Oregon Ducks since they are on the road with Dante Moore. Take it away, Russ.
Well, firstly, I think the point you make about them already getting ready to find a way to keep him, it makes sense. I mean, has Dante Moore shown some stuff this year? No question. I think he has shown more than anybody anticipated in terms of ability to make the throws, make them accurately, make good decisions. But there's also been a lot of ups and downs after that really racing start. There have been some games, especially you saw that Indiana game where you watched him, you thought, this guy's not a high-end prospect if you just watched that one game.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he isn't a good prospect. I'm just saying off that one game, you'd say, not really. So it's one of those things I think he would benefit from a second year there. I like the skill set. He's got the size. He's an athlete. He seems to be a kid who's remarkably gone through some stuff, going to UCLA, transferring back and everything, matured. So he's a very mature kid. I think one more year he's going to put himself in a great spot. I love the skill guys around him. The Whittington, the running back, maybe a short little dude at under 5'8", but he's a good player, very dangerous in the open field. We've talked about Evan Stewart. Gary Bryant is not only a dangerous receiver, he's also a really good punt returner. They have the junior tight end, Sadiq, who you brought to my attention earlier in the year. Athletic kid, can stretch the field, can make plays down the field. He brings a weapon, sort of a big weapon to their offense in terms of size, whereas Bryant, Stewart, and Whittington are all sort of smaller guys. Sadiq's got the size. And then you look at that offensive line. There's definitely been some ups and downs for Isaiah World, who I think, according to a lot of people, they thought he was going to be a guy that could challenge to be a top 10 pick coming into the year. Big kid, no doubt NFL talent when you look at his size, athleticism, and his long arms. But definitely some inconsistency this year. Footwork been bad, some of his positioning. But with him and Harkey, when you're talking college football, those are two good tackles. Are they elite NFL guys? No. I think World is probably going to be in that second to third round. Someone's going to take a roll of the dice, even though his production has not matched his talent this year. Harkey, to me, is sort of the opposite. Harkey's not a top athlete, a little bit stiff in the hips, a little bit of a waist bender, but he plays very good football. I think he's going to be probably an undrafted free agent, maybe a late round pick as a guard conversion because he has short arms. Then you look at the Bedford kid and the Pregnon kid, the guard. Two interesting kids because I think when you look at Pregnon, you see an athletic kid. There's a lot of upside there, powerful kid. I think he could end up being a second or third rounder. The Bedford kid to me is very unique because he's so long. You're talking about a kid that's 6'5" and change. He has 34 and 5/8 arms, 10-inch hands. This is a kid you look at and say, okay, is he your third guard? Could he also be that fourth tackle on game day? Because he's got those long arms. Even though he's not ideal athletically to play tackle, we've talked about versatility and value for offensive linemen. He's a guy that stands out to me as could he be that guy that could be a backup at all spots? Very intriguing kid. Defensively, it's mostly really there are two juniors on the D-line, the guys that jump out and grab your attention. The Ugalele kid, defensive end, he's a bigger kid. He's athletic. He's long. He looks like a powerful, dominant guy. And then you're surprised by his agility and speed. Amari Washington, interior guy, another junior, 320-plus pounds, powerful kid. I think
skyrocketing.
Yes, he's gone from a guy, I think, entering the year that people were like, oh, he's talented, but where is he going to fit? To now, I think NFL teams are literally saying, is this one of the top 2 or 3 interior guys in the country that could threaten to be a first-round pick? We've talked about the linebacker Bechter, however you want to pronounce it. Love the kid. Love the way he plays. He's all over the field. I just don't know if there's enough athleticism there to realistically challenge to be a starter. To me, he's that guy that comes in and is just a phenomenal backup special teams guy. We've talked about Canada and Theron Johnson, two good, solid corners. I don't know if either one of these to me is a guy that you're definitely going to see drafted. I think they're more towards end of the draft maybes, priority free agents. We've mentioned the Luke Basso, the long snapper. I like this kid. I think he's got a chance to stick in the NFL as a snapper. And the Sappington kid, the kicker, I like him. I don't think he's getting drafted, but I do like Sappington. He's not a big kid, but he has shown the ability to make some big kicks in some key spots. But I don't know if he's got the leg to really threaten to where an NFL team's going to take a chance on drafting him.
Yeah, a couple guys I'll touch base on. Evan Stewart is going to be one of the fastest players in this year's draft. And for that, I think he maintains a top 100 status despite the lack of production this year. It hasn't been a world beater type of
Yeah,
season.
it's an odd thing, right? Like we
Yeah.
came into the year expecting a lot, and it's
Mhm.
been disappointing.
We did. And Mekhi Hughes was another guy we expected a lot, and he winded up redshirting after his lack of playing time earlier in the season. You mentioned Whittingham. And I don't know if he gets drafted, Russ, but he's one of these make it guys, a little kind of do it all back. He runs well. He catches the ball well. He turns his legs on contact. He gets those extra yards. He does a little bit. He's a jack of all trades, master of none. And I think you can find a home for a guy like that at the next level. Bear Alexander, the defensive tackle who came over from Cal, has really come on strong at 6'3" and 315 pounds. The issue there is going to be the previous concussions, and teams are going to want to investigate that as we get closer to the draft, if he declares, because he is a redshirt junior. I mentioned Whittingham. He's a short guy, 5'7" and 5/8", 202 pounds, out of Western Kentucky, a former transfer there, and he's just elusive. He's got great vision. He's burst. He's a late round candidate for sure. Emmanuel Pregnon, I want to talk about him and Isaiah World because, I thought Isaiah World coming into the season was an overhyped media creation. And I went back and watched his film last year. I didn't see this big dominant offensive tackle prospect that everybody was talking about. I saw a lot of mistakes. I saw a lot of penalties. In fact, 32 penalties his first 3 seasons. He's got a lot.
He may be the ultimate Tarzan Jane guy, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's alluring. It looks like, first one off the bus, but I haven't seen him put it all together. And meanwhile, I watch Pregnon. He's fundamentally sound. He's crisp. He's got knockback. He's mauling people. I think Emmanuel Pregnon has a chance to be the first guard off the board at 6'4" and 3/8", 320 pounds, great length. He's got tackle type of length. One guy I've been down on, and I know there's a lot of love for Dylan Thieneman, the safety who came over from Purdue, and he's a tackle machine. He shows up constantly around the football. He's like a coach on the field. He's always in the right position. I think my problem is with him. He I have him listed here at 6 foot 207 pounds. He doesn't play that way. I've seen this guy get blasted on run plays, taken out of the play, barreled over, and he's willing. He'll stick his shoulder in there and try to make the play. I just don't know if he has the strength, right, for me to consider him. I don't think he's a first round pick. I can understand the love, but I don't know. I guess he's in that top 100 equation. He's got great testing measurables, and he's got a lot of experience and production, and he's done it now at Oregon. So I get it. I just don't see him as one of the premier playmaking safety type prospects. I think Caleb Downs is light years ahead of him in terms of that ranking. Tatum Tuatu, the offensive or the edge rusher there alongside Ugalele, they're bringing it from every direction. And Ugalele is a guy, he's got a little bit of Alex Highsmith to him, just a high motor, relentless pursuit, the effort, just never gives up on the play. And you'll see a lot of his sacks are just byproducts of him not giving up because he's just nonstop with it. And then Kenyon Sadiq, I agree, don't love the size at 6'3", 245 pounds out of Idaho Falls, Idaho, by the way. And he's going to run like a deer. He's going to test well. He's got obviously tremendous production, but so did Harold Fannin coming out of Bowling Green. And so, you don't see Fannin lighting it up exactly. So I think you do have to take the size into consideration. And I'll bring it back around to the quarterback out of Detroit, Michigan at 6'2" and 6/8", 210 pounds. This Dante Moore, I think that what I like about him most, Russ, is he's just cool as a cucumber under pressure. And he doesn't get rattled. He doesn't panic. He doesn't make poor decisions. He's a precision passer who's going to work the short to intermediate parts of the field and beat you with his feet when he needs to. And I think he's got to develop a little bit more as a progressional reader, and there's room for improvement. And that's part of the excitement about his game too, is the upside, the potential, because he's just really scratching the surface in terms of what he can be.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I think with more, and it's just so interesting because it's so different than it was before 10 years ago when you had guys transferring, you had guys jumping out so early. Now, to me, he's the perfect guy when you look at he's had a really good year this year. There've been some disappointing games. The perfect guy that you say, all right, he's going to be a redshirt junior next year, his fourth year in the program. That's when he's going to explode and become the guy we have seen flash of, but he's going to do it every game. And he's going to give himself a chance to be the first overall pick. And that's why, to me, it would make so much sense both for him and Ty Simpson to go back and let them show us their development, and they can both battle for that spot next year.
I agree. He's Russ Lande. I'm Ric Serritella. We're halfway through the Oregon and Iowa game. We're giving you all the names you need to know for the upcoming marquee matchups in the College Football Week 11 docket. It's Saturday, November 11th, 2025. Let's flip over to the Iowa Hawkeyes. 6-2, Russ, hosting these Oregon Ducks, and they're going to bring it. So let us know who you got on the prospect radar.
Well, I'll say for this, it's a much shorter list because most of their guys are underclassmen that are really sort of helping them carry to this point. I mean, they have the quarterback transferred in this year, Gronowski.
Yep.
We've talked about him earlier in the season. I mean, he's an athletic kid who can actually run better than you expect for a kid that's over 220 pounds. I don't see him as a as a natural guy sitting back, going through progressions, bang, bang, bang. He, to me, is more of a find a play, make it happen type quarterback. I don't see him as a guy that's probably going to get drafted early. To me, he's a late round guy you take a shot on because the character's there. He's got good size. He does have a good enough arm, and he's obviously athletic, but I haven't seen it as a passer enough to get me excited. Not surprisingly, at Iowa, to me, their two best prospects are their offensive linemen. I mean, Iowa's history of producing unbelievably fundamentally sound offensive linemen who do exactly what they have to do physically, always stay on their feet, generally outplay where they're drafted at the NFL level is long. Logan Jones, their center. When you first put on the film, you look at a kid, he doesn't look menacing, 6'2" and change, 300 pounds, doesn't look it like walking off the bus, like he's the man who's going to take on everybody. But when you watch the film, and this kid's feet are in the right place, knows what he's doing, never gets off balance, does all the things you want. And he's smart because the staff there at Iowa, they would not play this kid at center if they didn't feel he could handle the mental side. And then the Dunker kid, the tackle. I don't know where he's going to fit at the NFL, whether he's going to stay at tackle or inside the guard. I think some of that's going to come down to how he measures. He measures at 6'4" from what I know, but I don't know if he's going to actually show that in terms of when they really measure him. NFL teams are very hesitant, but I think when you look at him, I think he's a guy that when you watch him play, he doesn't wow you as an elite athlete, but he's a good athlete. He's a guy who has good feet, good bend, knows where his feet are supposed to be in terms of positioning. He doesn't lunge. He doesn't reach. He stays under control. I like Dunker. I think he's going to be a better pro than he's been in college. I think he's going to continue to grow and improve. Defensively, to me, there's one guy above the rest. That's the Llewellyn kid, the defensive end.
Yeah.
Big, long kid. We've talked about him before. 6'5" plus 260. He reminds me a little bit of a guy that came out over a decade ago named Aaron Campman. Came out of Iowa. Sort of an underrated athlete, but fundamentally sound. Great use of long arms. Knows where to be. I like Llewellyn as a guy who's going to get into the NFL, and he's either going to become a quality starter or that premier backup who fills in a lot of spots. I really like him. I think he's probably going to be a day two guy. The other defensive prospects they have are guys that I think are late round considerations. They have Aaron Graves, a defensive tackle. Doesn't blow my doors off when I watch him. He's a good football player, but not a special impact, twitchy guy. They have Ethan Herkett, another defensive end. I think he benefits a little bit by having Llewellyn out there, taking some of the focus off him. But he doesn't get me the attention to me that I say, wow, this guy's going to be a make-it guy at the NFL. I think he's going to have a bit of a hard time. And then the safety, Nwankpa. You look at the history of Iowa safeties, they have a lot of guys that were not great in terms of great players in college. They were good, fundamentally sound guys who ended up coming into the league and becoming productive, either starters or third safeties who really helped on teams. I think this guy's a guy that's probably going to be undrafted, maybe a late round pick, but I think he has the tools to be that third safety, backup special teams guy. There's something about this kid when you watch him. He's confident and he's around the ball making plays. He doesn't make the big mistakes.
Yeah, Nwakpa, he's got a little bit of Mukumba for the Eagles coming out of Clemson,
A little
to
bit, yep.
that length, the athleticism. He's 6'2", 212 pounds, and he creates turnovers all over the place. And I think that's what stands out. Is he's just got this propensity to create turnovers, interceptions, forced fumbles. He's going to test extremely well. I think
they all do out of Iowa.
yeah, I think Nwakpa is going to really surprise some people as in terms of how high he goes. I could definitely see him as a top 50 overall selection. You mentioned Max Llewellyn at 6'5", 260 pounds. He is quick off the edge. And I think, he's kind of the situational pass rusher. You can bring him in off the bench, left side, right side, maybe even kick him inside. I mean, he's got that kind of versatility. And I just love the way he flies off the football. I think he's going to be a very good rotational defensive player you can have in the middle to late rounds. I like those kind of players. And, Logan Jones, what's not to like? I love the fact that he has the Iowa school record 695-pound squat. That's incredible lower leg strength. That is Jason Kelsey-esque type of lower body leg strength. And just for good measure, he's got the upper body strength because he was, oh, by the way, a state champion shot putter in high school. So he can fling that thing too, that Logan Jones. And I do agree, like between Logan Jones, Jennings Dunker, very polished, fundamentally sound. You can plug him and start him first day, and you're not going to get embarrassed, right? And I think you also got to pay attention to this Trevor Locke, who's only a redshirt sophomore, but to be starting at tackle at Iowa with that kind of size at 6'5", 302 pounds, he's definitely somebody to keep on the radar. Who knows? Maybe for this year's draft. I think for next year's draft, Gronowski, he reminds me a little bit of Cam Miller from North Dakota State coming out last year. Smart guy, maybe needs to evolve a little bit as a passer. Certainly gets it done on the ground as a runner. And I think that's where I find Gronowski right now in his development. And he did have an East-West Shrine Bowl invite last year, decided to return, take the NIL payout and transfer. And anybody else there that I need to cover? No, I think that'll do it. But Dunker, very, very, everything is at least, he checks off the boxes.
Yes.
At least adequate, right? Everything is at least adequate. I have here in my notes. He's never out of place. Very smart, very sound, very crisp. And that's what the Iowa Hawkeyes produce. Very smart, crisp, sound players that are ready to play immediately. And you got to appreciate that and respect that. And I'll tell you, this hour of power is flying by. We got one more great matchup. The Big 12, probably the matchup of the day. Coming out of the Big 12. We're going to get it out of the way early, noon Eastern time over on ABC. Number 8 BYU, 8-0, Russ, taking on Texas Tech at Texas Tech, who's all of a sudden red hot again, those Red Raiders. They're 8-1. Just a little overview before we break down the prospects.
Well, I think this is a game, I think if you had looked a season ago and said, would either of these teams be here? I think the answer would have been no, especially for Texas Tech. Their GM, James Blanchard, has done a great job of bringing in guys. He's focused. He's one of the most focused guys on the transfer portal of all the D1 schools. And they've done a great job of bringing in guys over the last 2 years to upgrade their roster. And I think it's a great example of how you can change a team quickly if you are efficient and correct on your evaluations. And they have done that. So to me, it's a great look at two teams that have dramatically improved this year, and give Texas Tech's GM a lot of credit. They have really built a strong roster in a short time.
Yeah, well, it comes down to how much NIL money you can raise. And, down there in Texas, they've done a wonderful job. In fact, I think they spent more money, Texas Tech did, than the Texas Longhorns, right? And the results show. I mean, you got to pay to play in the modern day college football landscape. But let's take a look at BYU. We'll start off with the Cougars, who are Undefeated, Russ. Go ahead, take it away.
And they're undefeated with a lot of good prospects that are seniors. And that's what's impressive to me. And we've talked about the Chase Roberts kid before, big receiver, over 6'3", over 210 pounds. This kid is athletic. He can run better than I think people give him credit for. Because a lot of times when you watch a big kid, he doesn't look like he's running by people, but he does. This kid's a long striding kid with good speed. I like him for the next level. They have three good offensive linemen. To me, the best guy of the group is Waylon Laputo, but they also have Austin, and I'm not even going to try this, Luoso and Isaiah Jetta, their tackle. These are three guys that are all going to get opportunities. Laputo is going to probably be somewhere in that third to fourth round type role. The other two guys are probably day 3 or PFAs, but you're talking about three good, sound senior guys. They have experience. They're starting. They don't make mistakes. They're good football players. They also have the tight end, Carson Ryan. Not special, but a good player. Good size at over 250 pounds. Runs better than you think he does. I like what they have offensively, skill set wise, in terms of seniors. Defensively, they have Jack Kelly, edge guy, similar a little bit to the kid from LSU, Perkins. And then where is he going to fit? He's a 6'1" kid. Our NFL team's going to be comfortable with the length, but he's 6'1", 240. He knows how to get to the quarterback, plays like every snap matters. He's made better because they have the junior, Keanu Tunabosa, who has really been an impact guy this year, redshirt junior. Not sure if he's coming out, transferring from Utah. This kid's really upgraded their front defensive line. On the back end, they have some good defensive backs. Corner, Maury Bamba, long linear kid. We've talked about him before, that this is a kid who could possibly really go up draft boards as they get into the testing phase, because he's going to measure over 6'2". He can really run. It's a matter of, do you think you can take what he is now and mold him into the player as the talent to be? Tanner Wall, safety, and Talon Affey, a safety. Two kids. One athlete is Alfley, taller kid, over 6'2". Both these kids are active football players. I don't think either one of them is a guy that's going to be drafted. I think they're both probably priority free agents. But those guys provide that back end sort of, we're going to take care of things. We're not going to let anything big get behind us. And that's been a big part of BYU's defense this year, is don't give up big plays. I think those two safeties and that underclassman defensive tackle have been a big part of their success.
Yeah, Tanu Vatsa, he's a run stuffing, 2-down player at the next level, and he transferred from Utah. There was a kid down there at the Senior Bowl last year from Utah that kind of reminded me of him, but 6'4", 300 pounds, very sturdy against the run, is going to bull rush you all day long, convert speed to power, came over from Utah. Was also a standout basketball player, so I think he's going to be one of those sneaky testers. Isaiah Glasker's really come on and been very productive for this defense. He's a long, lengthy, 6'5", 235-pound on the edge there, alongside Jack Kelly, who I agree with you. I think Kelly's more of an off-ball linebacker now. Bamba's got a buzz around him. I just got hit up by a scout on Maury Bamba, and he is basically going to spit out and compute Tyreek Woolen type of measurables. At 6'3", he's going to run 4.3. You just wonder, is he ready? I don't think he's ready. So you got to kind of stash him, develop him, bring him along. But all those athletic traits and size, there's going to be a lot of NFL teams lined up for his services that want to work with that. Lapahu, the guard, I agree with you. It feels like he's been on the radar forever. Chase Roberts, all he does is make plays, right? And he's not going to test well. He's going to be considered slow. He's going to be considered tall. He's going to be considered limited. And then he's just going to go in and just win a possession wide receiver job and make first downs and move the chains, because that's what Chase Roberts does. And the one guy we should mention who is back from injury, and I think one of the more underrated running backs, is LJ Martin, who's been very productive, phenomenal size at 6'2", 220 pounds. And he's going to run probably in the 4.4, the low 4.4s, Russ. And I think when you take the whole body of work, the resume, the between the tackles ability, the size, the testing, LJ Martin could very well find himself hearing his name called somewhere in the mid to late round selections.
Agreed, no doubt. I think you're 100% right about him. I think he's the guy that is sort of come on, and I think if he does, yeah, I mean, I think you've got him sort of nailed on the screws there.
All right. So we are moving and grooving. We got one more team to break down here. They are the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is, insert whoever. This system is revving this Red Raiders offense, and they've got one of the premier pass rush prospects who's making a name for himself. And in recent weeks, Jacob Rodriguez, this linebacker, he has really catapulted his draft stock as well. Who do you want to talk about first?
Well, firstly, I think when you look at that offense, I mean, whether it's the quarterback, Morton, who I think has been better than I think people expected, but then you have the two receivers, Virgil and Douglas. That offense, you talk about it. It is what it is. Like they're wide open. They're putting the ball out there. These are both good receivers, both big receivers, over 6'2". I like both of them. I think the Virgil kid's got a little bit more juice to him, but I think both of them can play. The John Carlos Miller's a kid we talked about before. Not a special tight end prospect, but I think this is a kid that's going to get into a camp. I think he's going to challenge to find a way to make a roster. Both their tackles are good players, but I think they're different guys. Jados, I think, has a chance at playing at the next level. Great length at over 6'6", long arms, 34. I'm not saying he's a high-end prospect, but I think he's going to be a late-round pick. The Zambrano guy, I'm still trying to figure out where he fits. He's decent size, almost 6'5", 311, but he's got short arms. And I think NFL teams are going to get a little panicked by 31 and change arms.
Yes.
I don't think they're going to feel comfortable saying, okay, he's a tackle. And then the question becomes, do they think he's strong and powerful enough to play guard? Because of that question, I think that a player who's on film production is probably that of a late round pick, is probably going to be an undrafted free agent because teams aren't going to know exactly where he's going to fit. Defensively, I mean, you talk about a team that's loaded. Romello Height. I mean, you talk about guy David Bailey. These two guys coming off the edge all season. They've been causing havoc. And then you say, okay, great. They're great at defensive end and they're senior prospects. Yeah, they're also good at their interior guys. The Hunter and Gil Howard, you're about two guys that are going to get drafted. I think the Gil Howard guy, there's going to be some teams that freak out because he's under 6 feet and he's got 30-inch arms. But you know what? Somehow, some way, I really hope that kid can find a way to curl his toes or squeeze his hips or whatever he's got to do, get that extra eighth of an inch to get to 6 feet.
It'll be a hard sell.
Yeah, it is. But if he can somehow get 6 feet, teams get a little bit more calm about that. But he's a good football player. Defensively, you mentioned Rodriguez. This is a kid I think when coming into the season, you thought undersized kid, okay athlete, where does he fit? But every game this season, you see a kid that runs better than I think people thought. He's always around the ball. He's always making big plays. He, to me, has shown that he is a guy that he may not have the great testing numbers, but he is a football player through and through. This kid's going to play at the next level. The Wisniewski kid, the safety, big, long kid. I mean, you got 6'3 plus 220. He can run. Don't think he's going to be a high pick, but I think someone in that 3rd to 5th round, I think someone's going to roll the dice because he is a pretty looking kid. He can run. And they have two good corners. Balfour's probably, to me, the better of them, a little bit better in terms of measurables, over 6 feet, 190 pounds. A.J. McCarty, good size, decent. He's at 5'11", 192. But when I look at the two of them, Balfour to me is a guy that looks like an NFL corner, long, linear kid. McCarty, I'm trying to figure out where he jumps to me as a talent. I think both those guys are day 3 prospects, maybe undrafted guys, but they're good college football players. Texas Tech is loaded. They've done a great job of building a roster without recruiting guys out of high school, but finding guys that other programs maybe undervalue and getting them in through the portal.
Yeah, you mentioned Wisniewski, Cole Wisniewski from North Dakota State. Usually, if you're at North Dakota State, I would suggest, hey, just stand by. You'll be fine. You'll get recognized. But I'm kind of glad he transferred up to the Power 5 because he's making plays now all over the place. He was an all FCS standout, was a quarterback in high school, and he's got the length at 6'3" and 3/8 inches, 221 pounds. Going to test well. Obviously, very, very smart. Romello Height, I mean, he is just flying off the edge as well. Coming on, I think Bailey is the guy that came in with the hype. right? And he's lived up to it. And I think with David Bailey, you want to just see him, and he has the pass rush repertoire. Like you see him pull out the moves, the rips, the dips, the spins. I think he gets a little bit too comfortable relying on that power and that strength. And that's like his go-to is just overpower guys. And he can do that at the collegiate level. But when he gets to the next level, he's going to get washed out against some of the more developed tackles that he goes up against. So got to maintain the gap integrity against the run. But David Bailey looking like a top 20 overall type of prospect. I think Jacob Rodriguez is squarely in the day two conversation now. A little bit light, a little bit short, 6 foot, 230 pounds, but also another former quarterback, and that shows up on film as well. But, you know, NFL scouts, I think, are going to get over the size limitations. You mentioned Reginald Virgil and Caleb Douglas, two lengthy, tall, big targets who can run well, make plays. They also got the redshirt junior Corey Eakin, who's emerged as a pass threat. And you mentioned the John Carlos Miller tight end. They also have Terrence Carter, who's listed at 6'2", 232 pounds. Usually those guys, Russ, maybe have to try to convert to fullback or make a living elsewhere. And it's tough when you're a productive college player and you just lack the physical necessary requirements at the next level. These guys get lost in the mix. And I hate to say it, but he'll probably be playing in the United Football League somewhere. And then we do have to touch base on Baron Morton because I think grades are higher than people realize on this young man. And
Yep.
he did get hurt a little bit, went down, in stepped Will Hammond, and you said, oh, wow, well, maybe he's a byproduct of the system. But Morton doesn't have the prototypical size, 6'1" and 4/8", 205 pounds, but he just knows where to go with the football, his timing, his touch, the anticipatory skills, the experience. And he's had some big time games throughout his career. So Baron Morton, you know, I don't think teams are going to draft him in the later rounds thinking, hey, we have a future starter here. I think they're going to draft him in the later rounds and say, hey, we might have a backup for the next decade in a Baron Morton type of prospect.
Yeah, and a backup that is going to be okay with it. He's going to be like, hey, this is my role. What do I have to do to make the team better? To me, he fits that role 100% perfectly, and I think that's why he will probably be drafted higher than anybody thinks he will, because he's going to be able to fit in with no problems and be that guy. He's not going to be an ego guy who's trying to bully his way to beat out the guy. He's going to be, I think, obviously he's not going to give up and say, I don't want to ever play, but I think he's going to be a good guy in the locker room, even if he isn't the starting guy. So that's why, to me, you look at him and say, this is a guy that he's going to fit in the NFL. Whether he's a 2 or 3, I think he's got a chance to have a long career.
All right, there we go. We got through another episode, Russ. A little overtime today, a little bit longer than the hour of power than we usually do, but great breakdowns and analysis. We always appreciate the time. And of course, everything you're doing outside of the show with the professor curriculum at the college and then the football GM and scouting course, which, by the way, you can still sign up over at smww.com. It's not too late for that. We've also got the analytics course starting Monday night with Steve Palazzo at a 33rd team. I actually registered for this one, Russ, because, you know, those who follow the NFL Draft Bible know it's just hard-hitting analysis. It's not a lot of data and analytics. I've never really kind of gotten into the full data and analytics, but I'd like to incorporate that a little bit more in our scouting report. So I'm taking the SMWW analytics course. I know our good friend Teddy Gavay also took that course. And so anything else you want to add here before we depart the show?
Well, first, a huge believer in the analytics, so I'm all for it. I love it. Aaron Schatz, who started Football Outsiders years ago, is a good friend of mine, so a huge believer. But I have to pass along a very funny story because, you know, I worked not only in scouting, but I worked in TV for a while, worked at the NFL Today show, and I was sort of Jim Nance's information guy while we were on the air. But one of the years we had Ditka. It was one of the guys on the studio show. And I used to tell this funny story, and all my friends would hear it, and they think I was crazy, about how Mike would walk around with a roll of 15 grand, and it would all be hundreds. And every time we walked by a homeless guy, he'd peel off 100. And all my friends heard that, and they thought, what? You got to be kidding me, right? They thought it was crazy. I got a bunch of texts this week because it turned out Nance was interviewed for some newspaper article, and he told the same story. And all my friends are texting me going, holy smokes, you weren't kidding. You weren't just joking about it. I said, no, it was a crazy deal. I said, my man had a big role, and he's just peeling off hundreds to every homeless guy we walk by. And everything he would buy when we go out, if we were going out to have lunch or whatever, the bill was like $18, he'd hand them 100. He'd be like, no, no change. It was a very interesting thing. And it's funny to think that I've been telling people this story for years. People, I think, questioned whether it was true. Then all of a sudden, Nance comes out and it's in the newspaper, and they're all texting me like, "Holy smokes, you weren't kidding!" So
The original Iron Mike, and
yeah.
most people know him as the head football coach, but he was a hell of a tight end.
Oh, one of the greats. He had the rookie record for catches and yards until I think 10 years ago. Yeah, truly great tight end and good guy. We had a lot of fun working together that year.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorite personalities, I think, in the history. I put him up right there with Art Donovan.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. He's gotta be in that group. There's no doubt.
All right, Russ. Well, we appreciate the time. We're going to let you boogie. I got a couple of website announcements I'm going to make before we wrap up the show, but we'll chop it up, break it down like we do each and every week next Saturday. Thank you so much for hopping on board and talking NFL draft on the Draft Watch Show.
You got it, brother. Thanks always for having me. It's my pleasure.
Right. Absolutely. There he is. Russ Lande, former UCLA scout, Cleveland Browns, St. Louis Rams, XFL, CFL. We're so lucky to have them here each and every Saturday. And if you just tuned in for the first time, make sure you share, like, subscribe over at our YouTube channel. Get all of our new show alerts. We're also isolating the team breakdowns and putting them up on the team profiles. And tomorrow is Sunday, which means the Oklahoma State prospect preview will be unveiled. I got it loaded up in the kitty. We'll publish that one tomorrow, and that'll be the last of all Power 4 programs over on the website. If you go over to the 2026 NFL Draft Rankings over on allaccessfootball.com, we've got every P4 school, and you will find all of the draft-eligible prospects for every university, verified measurements, projections, all kinds of scouting reports, courtesy of the NFL Draft Bible scouting department. Shout out to all of those guys: Dom Ambrose, Lauren Davidoff, Jarrett Regal, Ryan Paglia, Will Donahue. They're all doing a fantastic job. I know they'll be scattered across the All-Star game circuit as we count you down. What are we? 166 days away to the 2026 NFL Draft today. And so we'll be on location across the nation. We'll be covering all the All-Star games, the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl, lesser games. We'll be on location for the FCS Showcase, which I did not get a chance to talk to Russ about, but the FCS Showcase will take place the same week as the FCS Championship. And how exciting and cool is that? We'll be down there on location in Nashville for that one. Of course, we'll be out in Indianapolis for the NFL Scouting Combine. And we've got so many events throughout the week with the SMWW Football Career Conference. We've also got, I think, a Baldy Breakdowns film room session that we'll be doing either at the Senior Bowl or the Combine or both. We've also got the Inside the League Awards Seminar where our good friend Neil Stratton gives out the Best Draft Award, the C.O. Bricado Scout Award, the Eugene Parker Agent Award, and also right now, if you subscribe over at allaccessfootball.com on the annual pass, we're still giving out the value picks 2016 10-year anniversary, over 100 interviews conducted with scouts, front office personnel, and executives. If you want to learn how the sausage is made, get inside the war room, understand the thought process, logic, and analysis that goes into making these draft selections. We'll throw that in for free if you subscribe to All Access Football Annual. So you get the value picks, you get the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, which is published in April, featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports. And of course, we're counting you down. We'll be at the Pro Day circuit on top of the Combine, leading up to Destination Pittsburgh. And I'll tell you right now, like, one thing I know for a fact, I can say this with authority, is nobody turns out more NFL draft content than allaccessfootball.com. Every single day, there's an NFL draft update, whether it's the FCS Watch, the Mid-Major Prospect Tracker, the East-West Shrine Bowl Tracker. We've got the Draft Insider every Friday, the world-famous All Access Football Report every Wednesday. We've got the Draft Scout Notebook every Monday. We've got shows like Scouting the League, interviewing scouts by former scouts. We had Russ Lande, a former NFL scout, Roderick David, a former NFL scout. So if you love the draft, if you love player breakdowns, if you love learning about the NFL stars of tomorrow, well, then head over to allaccessfootball.com today and get down on it. We appreciate all the love and support. I was Ric Serritella for my co-host Russell Lande. We'll be back at it again next week on November 15th, 2025 to preview the college football week 12 docket. We just highlighted the week 11. And of course, you can watch the show in its entirety on the archive. You got about 45 minutes until the college football kickoff begins.